We're ready.
Thanks, Emily. We'll go ahead and call the various districts to order. James, you want to get it kicked off?
Great, thank you, Tom. Calling Pen 1 board to order. Claudio Campuzano.
Present.
PJ Christopher.
Present.
I don't see Annalisa Kohler online. Annalisa, are you on? So we don't have Annalisa and PJ, I'm sorry, Jeff Noodleman.
Present.
And James Allison is present. We have 4 or 5. We have a quorum. Thank you.
Great. Moving along to MCDD. Ken, you want to call your board to order?
Yeah, calling MCDD's board to order. Kenzie. You're on mute.
How about now?
Sounds good.
Great, present.
Corky.
I'm here.
Nancy.
I'm here too.
And Ken Anderton's here. Did I miss anyone here? And MCDD's board is called to order.
Thanks, Ken. SDIC doing a roll call. Kenny Stephenson.
Present.
Ken Anderton.
Present.
Tom Hansel's present. SDIC is called to order. Just wanted to welcome everybody to our November 18th format meeting. Looks like we have kind of a trickle-down agenda today. SDIC finishes out well into the afternoon hours, hoping we can get it done early. Just a reminder, this is a recorded audio meeting, so just confirming that. Emily, any public testimony today?
There is none.
Hearing none, we'll move right along. Janet, would you like to present us with the financial update, contract updates?
Yeah, I'm assuming everybody received theirs in their board packets. I know that all of the districts have asked to see more of a summarized financial statement. I summarized it as much as I can. Assessments just started coming in. We got in the first payment for MCDD, which is right around $590,000. The Pen 2 and Sandy both came in the 90,000 range, and I believe Pen 1's first payment was right around 35. So I should be getting assessments deposited weekly at this point. This is when the bulk of all the assessments will be coming in for our revenue. And then I did kind of open up about the service contract revenue on the financial statements for the board so that you could kind of see what we have budgeted and what's been billed so far. A lot of our the service contract revenues, we haven't billed them all. We're still waiting to get the port contract for MCDD. And then, you know, it goes on to show you where we are on salaries and ranges for MCDD, and then our non-capital and our capital projects. I have also opened those up so that you can see the individual projects that are being worked on. This is only through October 31st, and I don't have the October district billing yet from MCDD out to the other districts. We normally complete that by the end of the month. So that I'm still kind of waiting on. I guess, you know, whoops. Are there any questions about the financials or anything that I can help answer? I mean, we're fine. We're still early in the budget year.
Questions for Janet?
And if there's a different format or different kinds of information, again, we want to make sure you all are getting the information that you need to adequately supervise the work here. So we're anxious to make sure we're meeting your needs.
I guess one thing is that we just now are getting the direct bill assessments, so we will be getting those out in the next few weeks. Pen 1, we have the special appropriation from the city of Portland. I have not billed out on that yet. I'm still waiting to consolidate some of the expenses so that I can get that billed out. That is the special appropriation for $168,000. We are billing quarterly to BES for the project coordination that they are contributing to. And I don't think Pen 2 really has anything special, except for just the regular projects. We're doing fine. And kind of the same thing with Sandy. Once we get all of the special direct billings done, I'll be billing out all the federal properties, which is a large chunk in Sandy.
Janet, is the prior year closed out?
Yes, I haven't got the audit completed yet. I'm still waiting for the initial report from the auditors.
So do you customarily post the carryover fund balance on these reports? So our beginning working capital?
No, we don't. That is separate from the budget to actual. So are you asking about what the cash carryover was for
Yeah.
last year?
We had a forecast when we developed the budget, just kind of curious if it came in above or over what we had projected.
You know, I might have to get back to you on that. I've kind of been buried deep in the audit, so I've stepped away from it for a while. So I don't want to misstate what it actually came in at, but I think it was relatively close.
Yeah.
It usually is.
Yeah. It's always nice to have extra.
Yeah. And I normally, once I get the audits completed, then I go through and I reconcile that so that we have it for the next budget year and we true everything up. But if you'd like me, I can report that next year, or I mean, next month, sorry.
If it's not too much trouble, that would be awesome.
Yeah, let me make a note of that. Okay. Does any other board have a question about the financials or where they are on projects or?
Ben's going to show you sort of a consolidated report here during the budget portion of this conversation.
Janet, thank you so much. And thank you for, I understand you've taken on additional responsibilities as well lately. So thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
Moving on to item D. Mark, you have an update on the Army Corps work and the updated with the City of Portland. I'm showing you're on mute, Mark.
There we go. Sorry, I'm trying to manage different presentation windows. So my apologies. Okay. Let me get started.
And I'm here too, Mark.
Hi. Thanks, Jamie. Yeah, I'm going to get the PowerPoint up right now for us. And my apologies for the delay. Here we go. Share my. Okay, I think I'm sharing. Okay. Apologies.
I'll just go ahead and just start. We have a very brief update for you today. As you can see on the agenda, we only have, I think, maybe 10 minutes. So we just want to, like we've talked with you in the past, stay in front of you. This is Jamie Damon. Sorry, I introduced myself. So I've been working with Mark and with Evan. As you know, you've seen a lot of me. We're trying to stay in front of you at every meeting to update you on the PMLS project and where we are. And Mark has just a few brief updates for you, today. And with that, I'm just going to hand it over to Mark.
Okay, thanks, Jamie. And thanks everyone, and thanks for your patience this morning. Can everyone see the screen labeled agenda?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Perfect. I'm going to do this a little bit out of order, speaking to the City of Portland MOU, because we're going to save the best for last. So I think one of the important things that we have talked about has been partner meetings and partner cooperation. So I just want to give an update that we we're starting to reach out to various partners. We had a meeting with the Port of Portland more recently. Plan on reaching out on a real estate issue with the Multnomah County. So some of those are ongoing. I'll show you that slide that was sort of part of our funding discussion slide. I'll show you that a little bit later on. I also wanted to give notice that we've had some conflicting information. We had some an update from the Corps of Engineers about the final report. So the final report for the recommended plan, as you all know, has been signed by the Chief Engineer at the Army Corps, and we've been sort of told to hold the fanfare and not to release the report and be until the Assistant Secretary of Army and the Office of Management and Budget sign those. That said, more recently we got some renewed guidance from our team and said that the report will be publicly releasable. Now, before and I have shared a link to the existing report, but I do want to caveat that staff is preparing some documents, as we did with the TSP, to help folks navigate the report. So I'm going to share with you just a screenshot of the Corps' webpage, so you can just get familiar and see what's out there and what it looks like. But we're asking, we're going to do a more public release here very soon with some documents like a reader's guide and some Google Maps that sort of distill it all into a more digestible format. But in the meantime, this is the Corps' Portland Metro Levy System website. They sort of have it very awkwardly published right at the beginning, some links to this document. And I'll remind you, each of these appendices range from like 60 to a couple hundred pages. The main report itself is almost 300 pages. So it's kind of hard to wade through it. There's an executive summary. And I think you all have, some of you have got waded into this. Again, we want to make a reader's document that's very digestible and has page references to sort of the nugget, those tables, documents, graphics that you all will actually be able to reference quickly. So moving on to we like to show this 18-month timeline. I'm going to give it back to Jamie to kind of just go over where we're at and some of our next steps.
Yeah, so there's we have got a format in December, and we wanted to start bringing to you a little bit more information about the funding options and some budget scenarios. And then we're looking forward to having a deeper conversation about those in January with all of you. So you can look at the timeline here, and you can see we're on track with the City of Portland MOU being signed, or you will be working with that here in the fall. So that's we're pretty well done with that piece. And then the advocacy continues. We heard a little bit about that from Evan last month, and that that continues on. And then the funding options 1 and 2, or 2 and 3 rather, is what we'll be talking with you about in December and in January. And I think that's pretty much all I wanted to share about sort of what's coming up on the immediate calendar, Mark.
Thanks. Sorry, I am still having some screen issues, so it's always a little awkward. Yeah, so again, as Jamie pointed out, in December, January, we will kind of lift up this conversation. I think there's been a lot of curiosity. We've gotten a lot of questions, starting to ask specific questions about how this or that will work with respect to funding or allocations. So we've heard you, and we are working on some graphics that kind of put some more concrete numbers to some of the funding scenarios. What happens if we get the state levy grant fund? What happens? How do we make up any differences? We also have some ideas to share about sort of the timing of funding and some other ideas that we have in place to try to that that may simplify some of these decisions in the future, and could probably bring some clarity to the situation. So this graphic looks familiar. I think we have I guess we presented an update on the state levy grant last time. I don't think we have anything terribly significant to add to that, although I'm looking at Colin and Evan. If there's anything you'd like to add real briefly, we'll open up the floor. Otherwise, we'll move on. I think this is the bottom line here. This is looking like a mechanism that will help potentially take a lift off of the districts in funding the first year of PED. So we'll keep you updated, but that's coming into focus, and the some clarity on the magnitude of those potential grants, or sort of like a range, will be included in the forecasts that for funding and revenue and PED demands that we hope to bring to you in January to your individual boards, and possibly as early as December start to socialize that information, so that when you meet in your boards in January, you hit the ground running with some of that information. Oh, there's one more. So with that little fly up, kind of brings us to the big line item for today, the City of Portland MOU. You should have received in your packets the resolution that authorizes Executive Director Jim to sign an MOU with the City of Portland to form a task force and discuss all these PMLS issues that intersect for Pen 1, Pen 2, and MCDD. So SDIC obviously doesn't have any City of Portland jurisdiction overlap, so that's not in your packet. But I think we talked extensively about this last month, and so I haven't received a lot of questions in the interim, so I assume that it's pretty straightforward, but I did want to give you a moment to ask any final questions. We do hope that we can sign this resolution after this meeting, so that we can move forward with this. I think it's kind of codifying the work that's already in progress. And again, the City of Portland's folks last month just indicated they're committed to moving forward and helping support the PMLS and make sure that everyone's interests are met and we all have mutual success. So we're going to be moving forward anyway, but this document just helps codify that and seal that relationship. And we'll move forward with a task force charter that'll explain how decisions, again, all commitments and future decisions about obligating funds and sharing resources, those will be captured in IGAs as appropriate later, and those recommendations will be brought forward by Jim to you at future board meetings, and we will be giving you updates throughout the process. So without further ado, I guess I just wanted to open up to any further questions before we request discussion about the resolution.
Questions for Mark or Jamie?
Jeff. Oh, hey, hi, this is Jeff from Pen 1. Thanks for the great presentation, keeping everybody up to date. And maybe this is for somebody else, or maybe it's even been mentioned, but yeah, I'm flying through the MOU and the resolution, and appreciate Emily for sending it out. Looking at all the signature blocks, Beaver Transportation and BES and on and on and on. Where are all these folks? Has everybody else signed off? Are we the stragglers here? Just maybe that's already been talked about, but
that's a good question. And just to speak to, that sounds like an awful lot of different cats to herd, a lot of different signatures from a lot of different bureaus. But the good news is, as part of this effort, the city's really integrated under a city PMLS task force team. And so they meet regularly, and we've been sort of sharing this document back and forth. And I think just due to just the need to do some last fine tuning. They haven't signed it yet, but the city team is prepared to bring this forward to council at the next opportunity. So we'll sign it, and then we don't anticipate any concerns, issues, or foot dragging. Everyone from the various bureaus has been represented on this team, and I guess I'll let James or Nancy or anyone on that team speak to that.
I can speak to that. Kenzie, I know you had your hand up, but if I could address this. Yeah, we do have an internal team that's actually been meeting close to 2 years now, getting all the other bureaus up to speed. BES and Parks were doing a lot of this work before, and herding all these cats together has been a big job. And I want to give a shout out to Rochelle Altman in our office, who's really pulled it together. Mike Jordan leads it. He's also he and James are giving us urban flood safety water quality district updates as well. This piece is actually really important because it's important for the city, because the different directors of the bureaus who are going to sign on with their signature, we definitely get buy-in to have their people keep working on this work, which is important. But as you can understand, they have lots and lots of very important things going on. So this is very important to us as a way to keep ourselves together, but also very important to our communities, that we are going to follow through on our community's interests on the overall project. So this is also a commitment to our community, and it makes perfect sense for us to do it. So that's with my city hat. And then with my MCDD hat on, I'll say it also makes perfect sense for us to commit to working really closely with a major partner on this type of work. So I hope
Thank you.
that helped,
Yeah.
Jeff. Okay.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Kenzie, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. For my awareness, would you mind highlighting like an example that we're looking to where taking this approach on an issue has worked really well, and we've seen lessons learned that we're applying in the approach we're taking here, if either locally or somewhere else? Just it might be informing our how we're going about this.
Mark, would you like me to?
Sure.
So I don't think that we have a perfect example. However, we've been doing this type of coordination with the city and a number of other agencies through the Levy Ready Columbia process for 8 years now. And through that process, we were able to negotiate 2 state loans, get a comprehensive levy investigation completed, agree to the parameters to create a whole new district, get the legislation to do that, get the federal government to award us 100% federally funded feasibility study. So we have a long history at MCBB and with our partners, especially at the city and the port, of doing this kind of collaboration to reach really complicated agreements. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. So this is a continuation of that approach and that work. Thanks.
Any other questions for Jamie or Mark? Mark, you will send that web link out?
Yeah, I will send out the entire presentation. That web link will be, you're speaking to the web link for the PMLS?
Yeah, I didn't write it down. It was pretty long.
Yeah, we'll be happy to send that out. And yeah, so if we don't have any further questions, I'll turn it back. I'll turn it over to Emily to bring forward the resolution.
Yes, so right now I haven't, if Mary Helen does log on during this meeting, we'll go ahead and just bounce back to this. But for right now, it will just be MCDD in Pen 1 and
Let me know if you all need a resolution number or the language in front of you to go ahead and make that motion.
James, is Pen 1 ready for adopting a resolution?
I think we are. I wouldn't mind a resolution prompt if that's available.
Sure. So we're looking for a motion to approve Pen 1 Resolution 2021-11-01 to approve a memorandum of understanding with the City of Portland and authorizing the executive director to sign it related to PMLS.
So moved.
Great. Thank you, Claudio. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. We'll do a roll call vote. Starting with Claudio Campuzano,
Aye.
PJ Christopher,
Aye.
Jeff Noodleman,
Aye.
and James Allison votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Karen, is Pen 2 still without a quorum?
Yes, that's
Okay, so we'll move on to MCDD. Ken?
All right, could I get somebody to read off the resolution?
I can go ahead. So this is going to be a motion approving resolution 2021-11-01 from Multnomah County Drainage District, approving a memorandum of understanding with the City of Portland and authorizing the executive director to sign related to the PMLS.
Okay, and then do I have a board member that proposes that?
So moved.
All right, and second.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously.
Emily, we complete with item D?
Yes.
Great. Mark, Jamie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Moving on to Ben, budget development introduction. Take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for your time this morning. I am going to share my screen, at least attempt to. Should take a moment here. And I have two items for you today. Number one, I wanted to give you a very brief overview of the five districts actually, and the JCA. So you can see the budget in total across those five districts and the JCA for the current year, fiscal year 2021-22. And then my second item is I wanted to continue our conversation that we started in November when we asked for input from the boards into our budget priorities going into 22-23 budget development. So I'll start with this first item. And Emily, everybody can see my screen, right? My presentation. Okay, just making sure. So what I'll start with, this is budget items only. And I just wanted to point out a few things. These are rounded figures. So I rounded everything to the 1,000 or 10,000 figure. And I also wanted to point out that the beginning fund balance for these, for each district and the JCA is combined. It includes the undesignated, designated, capital, and other reserves all combined into a single figure. And also the net operations only includes, or I should say it excludes reserves, and it excludes the commercial loan proceeds coming into MCDD, and it excludes capital. So this is just net operations looking at current revenues, current expenditures, excluding capital. And then this last figure, change in fund balance, includes the capital. So you can see across the districts, our assessments across the entire system equal the $7.7 million. That is about 55 to 65% of our current revenues, annual revenues, Our service contracts is about 31% of our revenues across the districts. And you'll also notice that this high beginning fund balance in MCDD, that is really reflective of our commercial loan that we have, the $10 million commercial loan that we have for capital projects. So you'll see that drawn down significantly over the next year or two through our capital program. And then you'll see that personal services is about 40% of our annual expenditures. M&S is about 35%, again, system-wide. And then our capital program is about 20% of our annual expenditures. And we have a very robust capital program ranging between $1.5 million a year to well over $3 million a year. And our debt service is right around 6%. So that is just, again, very brief overview of the current year budget. What this shows you is very similar information. I have the same footnotes down below. Again, this is all 5 districts combined plus the JCA. But this shows you 3 years of actual historical revenue and expenses, as well as what we just looked at, the 2022 budget. I'll just give you a moment to review that. And that's the last slide I have on this. And I'm happy to answer any questions or receive any feedback on that.
Questions for Ben?
Any additional information you all would like to see in these reports, let us know.
I'll just say quickly that this is extremely helpful. The banker in me loves this and being able to see trends. And if anything, seeing the drivers or the percent change over time and anything that might, any outliers and explanations for those, that would be useful. But I think this is like tremendously helpful. So thank you.
Great. Appreciate the feedback.
Yeah,
Thank you,
and I'll second that, and I will appreciate it even more as we develop a cadence around sort of reporting out on this, because I think that as as board members, our first look is we're gonna start orienting to it, and as the more we look at it, the more it's going to prompt thoughts, discussion, and so really appreciate the effort on the part of staff to bring this to us on a regular basis. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you for the input.
Yeah, and I'll agree. I love having, I know that you work through very complicated spreadsheets, but being able to see it on 1 or 2 pages, and even the fact that you rounded to the nearest thousands just makes it easier to read. So I'm just going to say thank you for that, because I don't need to know how many cents it is or how many single dollars, but at this stage, rounding to thousands is very helpful.
Yeah, Ben, I'll echo that as well. Just in a few short weeks, you've made a huge impact of making these financials understandable and easy to read, and we appreciate it.
My pleasure. I'll keep up the good work. Thank you. Now we're going to move on. We shared the same presentation with the same group in November. So I'm going to breeze through the first half of this presentation. And we asked the format boards input into our budget priorities going into the 2022-23 budget development process. And we received some feedback from the boards that they wanted to see more granularity on the staff suggestions or what the staff would propose for budget priorities for 2022-23. So I have that detail for you, and I'll share that in this presentation. And then we still have the same question at the end, if there's anything that this group would like to add to that list of priorities going into the 22-23 budget development. So I'm going to go through this first section. You've all seen this before, and it should be also in your packet. Just a quick overview of our budget development calendar. It'll be very similar to last year. So we'll come back to the boards next month in December and we will adopt or certified a budget officer and also adopt a budget calendar so that we, especially with the urban flood safety and water quality district, so we can interact with the Multnomah County Tax Supervising and Conservation Commission, TSCC. And then we'll come back to each board with a financial forecast in January. These boards at this meeting, we will look for your approval of the budget in May, but again, with the urban district, they will be looking to approve the budget in April so that we can supply that to the TSCC in May. That's a requirement, that's a constraint. And then these boards' approval of the budget in May and adoption or final approval in June. So we shared this last time. Our approach is to maintain essential services, invest in our infrastructure, and prioritize our budget proposals under our new scope of work, ORS 550. And this is the granularity that some board members requested. So we gathered input from the managers at MCDD and the executive director. And this is our draft list of priorities going into 2023 budget development. This will continue to be refined as we move forward and work with the managers and also the boards. And this is what we're looking for your input on. If there's anything that we're missing, and I have 2 slides of this, and this may or may not be in your packet, but I have this slide and then one more. And we just kind of group these priorities under these topics of the legislative session that you've heard about, safety enhancements, and then also the urban district transition. I'm just pausing for folks to read through this on your own time. And I have one more slide. And these would be our priorities under the social justice, internal controls and system development. There's a lot of need there inside our organization, asset stewardship and other.
So Ben, this is Nancy. Just to clarify in my own mind, these 4 columns are, when we ask for staff input on priorities, that's what these 4 columns represent.
Very good question. I put these 4 columns on there to represent who would be responsible for executing those budget priorities once it's put into the budget.
Okay.
So, and these are groups of people. So the executive director's office represents several people in that area. And then administrative services is HR, finance, IT, that sort of thing. And then the other groups, engineering operations is a larger group. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Of course.
Hey, Ben, on the reliability, resiliency under asset stewardship, I've always seen my role as a board member to ensure we stay in compliance with the RIP program. That's kind of what we're all charged with. Is that just maintain levees and drainage systems? Is that synonymous or?
Yeah, so I have a couple answers for you there, Tom, really good question. So first off, I failed to recognize this in the beginning. These, the urban board just went through a process to identify mission, vision, values. So these value statements that you see here are on a prior version of the mission, vision, values that the urban board has been discussing. So these may or may not be accurate to what that board is currently discussing for values. Back to your original question, the RIP program, I'm trying to remember, someone can help me out. I'm trying to remember the acronym, what RIP stands for. I know I have it in my notes somewhere, but I don't have that one memorized yet.
Rehabilitation and Inspection Program.
Thank you. Yes. So to answer your question, Tom, yes, our asset stewardship basically includes continuing all of the portfolio of work that you've heard about over the last several months, including the RIP, the PMLS, just continuing to progress those forward as we've stated in the past. Hopefully, did that answer your question, Tom?
That's perfect. It's just that's the bread and butter of what we're charged to do. So keep those levies operating.
That's right. That makes sense.
And Chair Hansel, some of the investments we're going to be asking for around security and homeless outreach and garbage cleanup are directly related to our obligations under the RIP.
So I'll just go back one slide just to, like what Jim was saying, the safety enhancements that we have listed out here, and those all related to executing that work. So we had the same question that we asked in November. We just wanted to continue the conversation. If there are any other specific items or initiatives that the boards wish to pursue in fiscal year 22-23.
Ben, this is not directly answering your question, but I wanted to give another kudos. I really appreciated how you tied the values to the priorities. I think as we move to match with the updated values, being able to have that overarching narrative or about the organization's long-term goals and values, how that's informing strategy and how that's informing like our budget priorities would be a really helpful top-down approach to orient me to this budget conversation. And that's exactly what you started to do there, which I really appreciate and like look forward to continuing that.
Great. I will venture to guess that we will have more opportunities to talk about the priorities as we build the 2022-23. And so I'll be sure to include that tie in the future.
So Ben, this is Nancy again. I have a question. As I look through this, I know there are a number of things staff is working on to transition to the new district. Yeah, so I'll stop there. And part of that is that the new district has a broader mandate, and we definitely need to stay compliant in the RIP, steward our assets the way we have been or better as parts of the old board. I just want to make sure that the budget priorities are allowing the staff to also work towards that transition. That's what I'm assuming when I see this. So I guess I'm asking either you or Jim to address that.
You know, we're working really hard on the transition, but our first objective has to be to maintain flood safety. And I will just say, I'll report on this later, but the last couple of weeks have been quite busy. But we are making a lot of progress, I think, that I can talk about a little bit. But we're balancing those two things, and people are working really hard. That's what I can say. But yeah, we're trying to keep both those things in focus. It's why you'll see all of us trying to make these meetings more efficient and potentially less frequent. It's why we're focused on the advocacy with the legislature and really trying to get the mission, vision, values of the urban district completed for the board members who are on the urban district I just want to shout out to Colin and the team for making progress on the new revenue development, and the legal team for helping us address some of the complexities. So we're working on it, I guess, is the answer. And each day is a new challenge, particularly right now in the fall with the rainy season and all the debris in the system. So I would say maybe the pendulum has shifted a little more towards operational footing in the last 2 days or 2 weeks, and hopefully we'll continue to try and move in the right overall direction. I'm not sure I answered your question, but we are trying to be mindful of both aspects of our work.
Yeah, thank you. I guess I wanted to, you're asking the board for their priorities, and absolutely health and safety is the highest priority for our community and also our staff. And the lack of flooding is something I'll aim for. And yeah, I know it's a balancing act, and it could have some seasonal ebbs and flows because we are governed by the weather. But I just wanted to make sure as a board member that I was supporting the balance of doing what we have to do and also with an eye towards the future. So thank you for that explanation.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing you guys can do is continue to remind us to keep our eyes on the future. We've got several board members who have been terrific about that. And I know we're taking some steps around the LRC and other organizations that are affiliated with this work to try and make them more efficient and more aligned with the new organization. So you'll be hearing more about that in the coming weeks and months as we continue to make progress to try and consolidate decision-making where appropriate. You know, the agencies that exist now in the form of the 4 drainage districts are independent and they're viable, and we need to maintain them. But I do see us making some pretty good progress in making that shift to the more modernized approach to governance.
Then a follow-up question. I don't have the list in front of me, so I'm not able to review, but is there specific language that kind of keeps our focus on, you know, the local sponsor match for the PED, the construction, the FEMA accreditation work? I assume that's just folded into a broader statement. Our obligations for those are our district responsibilities.
We've been having individual meetings with the city and the port, and we're going to be extending that to the city of Portland, to the other jurisdictions to really try and drill down on the need for that first tranche of investment for the local match for the PED. And we're really trying to highlight, again, quietly and individually with the different boards and so on, that our next focus really needs to be that first payment. And then our other objective is to look for any external funding that helps us reduce the cost to the landowners for those PED costs, and to do everything we can to implement a successful general obligation bond referral to the voters, so that we can have that new district help cover all those costs and avoid putting all of that on the landowners when so many people benefit from the system.
Thanks, Jim.
And Colin, I don't know whether you want to preview at all some of the thinking you have around the certification projects. It may not be timely yet, but we are working to try and really prioritize a focus on decision-making around the design alternatives for those projects, because certification and accreditation obviously is of great interest to everyone in the floodplain.
Yeah, nothing additional right now. Thanks, Jim.
Ben, thank you for your, go ahead.
I was just going to say, thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Chair.
We're really fortunate to have Ben on board. The progress we've made in trying to clarify some of the financials is really tremendous. So thank you, Ben, on behalf of all the staff. I know you provided similarly great tools to us to help us manage the resources that the boards and the landowners provide more effectively. So really grateful that you're here.
My pleasure.
Thanks again, Ben.
So Mary Helen is here, and so we can jump back to that resolution for Pen 2 just to get that taken care of. She needs to bounce back to her other meeting.
Sounds great. So Pen 2, you're going to have to do roll call to order, and then take a motion.
Yes. And I can facilitate that.
Good.
So, yeah, that's no problem. So, Mary Helen, can you just acknowledge that you're here for the record?
Mary Helen Kincaid in attendance.
Yes, and Kathy Kellen.
Kathy Kellen here.
And Karen Myers.
Karen Myers here.
Perfect. So the Pen 2 board does have a quorum, and I'm going to go ahead and ask for a motion, and I'll just repeat it to make it easy. So the motion we're looking for is for Pen 2 resolution number 2021-11-01, and this is a resolution approving a memorandum of understanding with the city of Portland and authorizing the executive director to sign related to the PMLS.
I'll just say so moved, and thank you for accommodating this. I've got a review. I got tagged to be on a state Oregon Heritage Commission review panel, and I can't get out of it. But thank you for the accommodation to do this now, and I vote yes.
Okay, I'll second that motion.
Oh yeah, I guess I can't vote till, okay.
It's all right. Your enthusiasm is noted. All right, so then we have a motion and a second, and then I'll just go ahead and do a roll call. We'll start with Kathy.
Yes.
Karen.
Yes.
And Mary Helen.
Yes, and thanks again.
Yes, of course. So that's
See you all later.
Thank you, Mary
Thank
Helen.
you.
Appreciate you making time for us.
Yes.
I've never faced 2 Zoom meetings in one day, and you can't do 2 at a time. But I tried it on my phone and I can't see on my phone. I don't know. Anyway, long story, but technology ruled my life today.
Good luck with that.
All right, and I would just, I guess, note for the audio record, Nikki Schultz also joined since the start of the meeting, so she's here as well. And Tom, we can move on to item F.
Sounds good. Thanks, Emily. And we'll just note that Pen 2 is no longer in session or no longer in order. So we have a Beaver relocation.
Yes, thank you very much for your time today. I think this is a bit timely in the comment of how are we continuing to enhance operations and safety while also keeping an eye to the future. This is work that I have been doing and we have been doing under the environmental program for the current historic districts. And I think is also consistent with the kind of mindset that we want to carry forward. But it's something that helps us maintain operational reliability and also provide some benefit to the environment. So I'm going to give you an update on a Beaver Translocation event that happened this last fall, which has been the culmination of a couple years of effort, though at a pretty low level. It's just an FYI, couple minutes for questions, but there's nothing that y'all need to do on this today. First and foremost, I want to mention that MCDD's approach in MCDD and all of the districts is to manage beavers in place. Beavers are important parts of Northwest watersheds. They provide habitat and water quality benefits. They're also very important to our partners on our boards and not, and to many wildlife advocates and individuals. They're a state animal after all. So that is our first priority, and we do not lethally remove beavers. Even though their ecosystem engineering sometimes butts heads with our drainage engineering, we try to live together. And in 2017, we developed a beaver management guide in partnership with BES and ODFW that develops or lays out strategies that we can use in specific situations and kind of a flow of decisions we can go through to figure out how to live with beaver in particular situations. And our crew over the intervening years, I mean, they barely need the document. They are experts at figuring out what can they do in different places and how can they use different strategies like beaver deceivers or dam breaching to keep water moving and keep the animals where they are. Pictured here is the beaver deceiver in the TA ditch. It essentially kind of tricks them to build their dam in a place we can more easily manage and not, for instance, right in a culvert that goes under the road. So that's one of the tools that we use. But sometimes none of those things work as efficiently as we would like, and we still need to spend a fair amount of time and energy and money managing flooding and making sure that we do not have property damage due to beaver activity. So we're always looking for new tools to live with animals on the landscape. And that is what led Sunny, prior to my taking over this effort, to begin conversations with all the partners that you see here, BES, the Oregon Metro Zoo, ODFW, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Bureau of Land Management, on a translocation program. And translocation is biologists speak for moving animals from one watershed to another. And so it's very important. You can see how many wildlife agencies are up here that I use that term and not relocation, which they would take to mean we were moving them within the same watershed. But that effort, that coordination has been going on since 2019. We would have had our first translocation last year, if not for a number of complications related to the pandemic. And so this is something that both BES and MCDD were looking for as sort of an off-ramp when we have used all the other strategies that we can in a particular location. And in this case, that particular location was the TA ditch in SDIC off the Troutdale Tribal America truck stop exit that no doubt we've all spent a little time at. And that was the place that we trapped animals about a month and a half ago. And it's the first one in our watershed, which is not to say in the state or in the region. Washington uses translocation quite a bit, but it's a little less common in Oregon. So we did what we could to notify people that the live trapping was occurring, notify the businesses, put up barriers to accessing the area. And then the traps were set overnight, since beavers are nocturnal animals, baited with willow stakes and scent. This is Darren Bolin from BLM. He is a wildlife biologist and beaver expert. He did the trapping itself and went out there at dawn every day to make sure that the traps were removed as quickly as possible and the animals didn't spend any longer than they needed to in the traps. They caught 4 beaver in 2 different nights of trapping, which is considered very successful, and all the animals were unharmed. And then they went to the zoo, and this is Shelley. Margot is the other vet tech at the Metro Zoo that took care of the animals while they were there for about 2 weeks. They screened them for diseases to make sure we're not moving any novel diseases into the water systems or wildlife systems of another watershed. They make sure they're healthy. It's hard to tell the sex of beavers, so they sexed them and knew that we had 2 males and 2 females, which is important to have the ability to have a family group moved on to a new place. And they reported that they were pretty mischievous, which is unsurprising because they're mischievous wherever they go. But apparently they left some just sort of like vet materials, little rolling carts and stuff in their area overnight. And it was just bashed all over the place every morning. So they're busy wherever they are, I guess, is the takeaway. But they left the zoo with clean bills of health and were released at Crabtree Lake, which is on BLM land about 1 hour east of Albany. It's a large BLM parcel. They need to make sure beavers don't always stay where they're put. So you want to make sure that they're released and they're going to stay somewhere with a landowner that wants them and not just move to somewhere else who considers them a nuisance, and that there's no infrastructure that they can damage in the immediate area. So those are some of the criteria that are used to screen release sites. It's also good beaver habitat. Beaver have lived in this area in the past, plenty for them to eat. They can probably eat as many trees as they want here and no one will grumble about it. And there's historic dams from previous times when beavers have lived in this place that they could use to get cover while they settle into the new space. This is also, so beaver translocation, BLM wants to reintroduce these animals into their properties because they provide really important habitat benefits, as I mentioned. In this case, there's a wet meadow that has been starting to dry up since the beavers died. The last beaver family, they don't quite know why, but died, probably predated. And the wet meadows provide water and forage for a huge number of animals throughout the summer. They also hold water throughout dry periods and make the area more resilient to wildfire. So I'm going to put a link in the chat here. Maybe after I talk, if I can get this to be any bigger right now, but it will be some B-roll footage. The zoo's communication staff came out with us and they're going to put together a communications piece focused on living with beaver and their value in natural and rural landscapes. And so you'll get to see about 2.5 minutes of the release event. I put some other shorter videos that I took in that, you know, your patience on the quality of the camera womanship. Also, I had to be behind the zoo people, so my view is generally a little obstructed, but it was so cool. It was really fun. You could see them swim under the water. They swam around the lake a couple times. As of yesterday, they were still there. So they've been there about a month. They're using the dens. It seems like this is a great sign that they're going to settle here and be able to do their engineering in a place that that wildlife managers and land managers really want them. Just to wrap up, I'll say our role, Sunny and Dave Helzer at BES were really instrumental in getting this conversation started and finding that area of mutual benefit. I did a lot of scheduling and facilitating and kind of cat herding and wrangling along the way. Randy and Josh helped the trappers be successful with their knowledge of the site. And the ops crew, as I mentioned, priority is animals stay put. You know, they do the work to make that happen all the time. And my lessons, it was very cool. It was cool to be a part of. I hope next time they encourage us to bring staff members or board members out for the release event. So next summer, we hope to do another. And it's, yeah, it was very worthwhile and cool to have that sort of inspiring moment that we get to have these impacts where we can and where it makes sense and happens to overlap with our levee and drainage activities. It took a long time. You know, I think and everything went right. There's a lot of ways that if you have 3 males, you can't expect them to repopulate if they have diseases, if they get injured in the traps. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. So I guess it just also really reaffirms to me that our main strategy of living with beavers where they are as much as we can is a really good one. So yeah, once I stop sharing my screen, I'll send out a link. You can check it out at your leisure. Just a couple minutes of pretty mountain lake shots and seeing beavers dumped out of cages and swimming around lakes. But I'll take any questions before you move on to your next agenda item. Yeah, James?
Just a quick comment and question for starters. Thank you. It's really important to have feel-good stories like this and remind us of the full mission. And I hope as many staff as possible participated in this because I know you folks are carrying a lot of responsibilities across the mission of the organization. So thank you. The question I have, I'm sorry if I missed this. Do you have, through the program, through the partners, do you have sites on standby if you find that you need to act quickly to relocate other beaver in the future?
So the sites do need to go through a fairly extensive review, as I mentioned, and also you need that land manager that is interested and wants to have animals relocated onto their property. Right now, that's BLM, and they do have sites that they are interested in relocating animals to. We are limited though in that ODF&W has, I think it's August to October is the period of time in which they'll allow moving the animals. So that's fairly limited. And then also the entirety of a translocation event takes about a month in order to trap, hold them at the zoo, and then release them and make sure that they stayed. And this year, ODFW was, I'd say, cautious, and really this was a trust building event. So we may be able to do as many as 2 a year, but it would never be something that we could necessarily activate very quickly. It's probably always going to be a tool that is used. You know, if we need something to happen quickly, then we look to the operations crew to say, use dam breaching as a tool. Yeah. That's all I have. We'll send out this link, and if you have troubles with it, I wasn't sure the best way to share a video link with the group, let Emily know and we'll figure out a different way to get you the feel good pictures. But yeah, it's nice to have something happy, and there's a lot of heavy work that we do and important work. So it's fun that this one overlaps with furry creatures.
Thanks so much for your work, Carrie. I'm sure Randy and his team are missing those beavers about now.
You know, I don't know if they've had time to miss them. But it is helpful that there's, I think, one less high maintenance site that they need to be thinking a lot about as we had those big rains come in. At least for now.
Agreed.
Nice work, Carrie. I really enjoy your enthusiasm too around your work. So it's always great to hear your reports. Thanks very much.
Jim, I have you coming up with the executive director report. We ready?
Yep, I think I'm as ready as I'm going to be. I think I feel like I need to start by saying go Ducks, but I don't know why. It's just this sense I have. It's a big day tomorrow. And it's also a tough one for me. I actually have some hard things I need to share with you. And I have some good things. And following Carrie, I don't know whether to start with the good things or the hard things. So I wrote them down initially hard first. So I'm just going to go with that. I want to give you a heads up that I used the authority you have vested in me to declare a security emergency recently. That allows us to bypass some procurement regulations. The reason that we needed to do that, the board still controls the budget and the limits, but you will be seeing some contract amendments coming your way. We did that because we needed to bring in some armed security guards. We had enough break-ins on campus that our security provider would not provide service unless they could be armed. And in order to allow an armed presence on our campus, we had to change some policies. We had to reach out to our insurance providers. And again, I had to declare an emergency. I did check in with the board chair and got approval to move forward with that. So we now have armed guards on campus from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. weeknights, and on weekends as well. Sometimes we extend those hours. And I want to thank Corky Collier for helping me. He's helping convene a meeting of the businesses that are immediately adjacent in our neighborhood so that we can talk with them about any shared opportunities to improve security in the area. There's been multiple break-ins of neighboring businesses and up to and including an armed robbery at the neighboring trucking company. So it's just a challenging environment here at headquarters and throughout the system. So I want you to be aware of that, which leads me to the next topic, which is Pump Station 4 and the flooding we experienced at Fairview Lake over the weekend. We really had an alignment. We've been working for months with all of our partners to try and get secured access to Pump Station 4, remove some debris, remove some vehicles. And due to supply chain constraints, honestly, we couldn't get the concrete blocks that we're using to secure access until just last weekend. And that coincided with the alignment of our towing vendor showing up with some additional debris removal, but it also coincided with a significant rain event. What I want to tell you is we had done everything we could leading up to the rain event to make the system function as well as it could without Pump Station 4. As a result of the flooding emergency, we were able to access police resources. And so they were on site on Saturday and Sunday, which allowed us to make a bunch of progress in removing debris that was in front of our pump intakes and to be able to operate the pump station. So we were, over several days, able to get the water levels down to where they need to be and where we would expect them to be. There was one person whose basement flooded, and we take that very, very seriously. And we're working with that landowner in the city of Portland to try and address any concerns that are there. I do want to let you know that there's a real penchant, I think, for folks to want to find somebody to blame. I think you need to blame me. I'm the executive director, and we're responsible for flood safety. And we got close, but we didn't fulfill our mission this weekend. That said, we worked really hard since the day I walked on site to make a difference at Pump Station 4, and I want to make sure that you appreciate that we had a lot of help from the Portland Bureau of Transportation removing illegally parked vehicles and campers at the site. We had help from the impact reduction program and removing 150 cubic yards of debris from the site to open it up. We also had help from Portland Parks and Recreation in giving us an emergency access right to place eco blocks on Parks property without completing the full permitting that we're working on with them. It's a really challenging environment, and I think it's also important to remember that when I spoke to Chief Lavelle from the Portland Police Department and to Sheriff Reese, that both of them are very sympathetic to the conditions at Pump Station 4, but candidly what they told me is they're in triage mode. And so they can send officers when there's a real emergency, but in the meantime, they're dealing with real active threats to human life and safety. So they did dispatch officers this weekend. They had to depart on a couple of occasions. We did have 2 sheriff's officers all day on Sunday, and we have commitments from both Chief Lavelle and from the sheriff that if we are in an emergency situation, we should let them know, and they will do their best to send resources pending other calls. So we are operational at Pump Station 4, and we've secured the site. There are no vehicles around our property, and the garbage is significantly reduced. That said, you may have heard that there was gunfire in the area on Veterans Day. There was a threat to one of our vendors just a few days ago. So the situation is still challenging at Pump Station 4 from a security standpoint. And I want you to know that our operations team has some very serious and legitimate concerns about their safety at the site. So we have expanded our armed services contracts so that we will be working with the operations team to deploy armed escorts whenever they need to be there. And we continue to work with the sheriff's office and others to try and remedy the conditions at the site. But again, I need to stress that all the agencies involved in this are overwhelmed by the set of conditions that we're seeing in our community. And they're all doing the best they can to try and remedy it. We have expanded contracts with our armed services. As I mentioned, we've expanded our contracts with our debris cleanup firm. We've expanded contracts with our towing company, and we've expanded contracts with Cascadia Behavioral Health to do more outreach to campers. So all those things are happening. You will be seeing expenses reflected in your budgets and in our requests as we move through the budget process in the remainder of the year. Bill and Randy and I are meeting with the operations team this afternoon. We're going to sit down and we're going to try and overcome some of their fears, understand what it's going to take to create a safe environment. And we've also invited the Occupational Safety and Health Administration to come in and give us advice. So they'll be on site at several locations where our staff has experienced gunfire and other threats over the coming days. We hope to get a written report and recommendations from them so we can implement best practices that are available to us to keep our employees safe. So that's the heaviest thing that I have to say. We are not out of the woods, even though we have access to the pump station, because our staff is worried about their safety, and so am I. So we're going to continue to work on it. In better news, I had a conversation with the mayor's office, the Portland Bureau of Transportation, and the Port of, yes.
Jeff has a question.
Sorry.
Thank you very much. It's more a comment. Jim, maybe a lot of other folks did too. Caught you on the news, whatever evening that was. You did us proud. First of all, wearing the MCDD hat was a nice touch, but you handled yourself professionally, with compassion, but also with a tone of seriousness to the problem. And to, I'm obviously an insider, but I really understood the mission and, the way you presented it to the media. I thought you did a great job. So thank you for everybody.
I got mixed feedback on the hat, I'll be honest, but I'd been wearing it all day. And if I had taken it off, it would have been even worse. So, well, the Zoom screen makes it really hard to do the brand. I'm not sure how, got to get a different camera. Well, thank you for that. It's a really tough situation, and I would encourage you, if you bump into any of our operations team members, to please thank them for their service. So in better news, slightly better news, the mayor's office asked for some help getting together with PBOT and the port to talk about Marine Drive. I was assigned to reach out to Commissioner Hardisty's office, which I did, and I have a meeting set up with her policy director on Monday where we are hopeful that we can help that office understand that we really do need to get those automobiles and RVs and other things off of our levees so we can do our inspections and our maintenance. I'm happy to say that there was some skepticism that I could get that meeting, and within about 5 minutes of my voicemail, I had a meeting scheduled. So I know they're very interested, and I want to be clear that Commissioner Hardisty and PBOT have been helpful to us at Pump Station 4, despite a policy that says don't move vehicles that are occupied. They're also helping us at Marine Drive. There are several culverts that we need to keep raked up and clean, and they are actively working to try and prioritize signage and removal of vehicles that are preventing us from doing that. So hopefully we'll see some progress. It may take a few months, but I'm seeing increased interest in trying to protect the levees and, again, maintain our efforts under the RIP program, which are essential for our ratepayers and landowners. I also want to say that we decided to declare an emergency operationally over the weekend, and so we implemented our incident management team. And I want to just give kudos to Colin and the rest of the team. I can't name everyone because there were so many people, but it really provided all hands on deck. Most of our staff was working all weekend. Several of us were out at the pump station both days to try and keep water moving. The operations team was out all week ahead of time and through the weekend, keeping culverts clear so that the gravity flow could work while we were trying to get the pump station going. So I guess I just want you to know that this was my first emergency activation with the team. And I couldn't be prouder of how hard everyone worked, from Carrie going out to the station, to the ops team working long hours, to Bill out there all day, both days. Josh from the ops team was amazing. So again, the folks are all there. I see a question from Nikki, so I want to make sure and answer that.
Just a quick question. First, thank you to all of the ops teams that were out there dealing with what was a very difficult situation this weekend. Those of us that live on Fairview Lake are extremely appreciative. But my question was about the cleanup on Marine Drive. Is ODOT involved at all? Because, and if they aren't, there was a fire underneath 205 in the vehicles that are the 205 bridge where Marine Drive passes under. And so if they're not involved, I think they should be as well, because it's affecting their infrastructure also.
We will grow our effort to include them. They actually own a very small amount of the levee distance, but that area around 205 and around I-5 are consistent trouble. So we do need to engage them. So thank you for that. We're trying to start small and get some momentum.
Yeah. A fire under the major interstate bridge is a really big deal.
Yeah, it is. I do know that Portland Police, in conjunction with ODOT, did do some work in that area because there was a very active, very visible chop shop going on. Similarly, on Glass Plant Road, which is where we have a boat ramp and some other facilities, they recently did a cleanup there as well. So there's back to that capacity issue. What I've learned from Sheriff Reese and Chief Lavelle is that if we can give them a beginning and an end, so for example, an effort and a project to really work through areas of the levee, they're much more able to provide us with resources. It's that ongoing patrol, feet on the ground, that's a real struggle for them right now with all the emergency response they have to do. So anyway, thanks to the team for working all weekend. I want to report that we have made some good progress on the legislation, the tweaks to 550, which we hope will allow more people to support our work with their financial resources sooner and take all of the burden off, not all of the burden, but a significant portion of the burden off the landowners. Evan, I believe I'm right in saying we expect the bill to get introduced today. And so far, we're getting great help from all of the government relations people from our neighboring organizations and agencies. And we're hopeful that we'll continue to make progress on that so that the new board has options if they choose to try and broaden our rate base as soon as possible to help us with some of these challenges. The other good news is that we're close to landing an interim CFO. I'm in the midst of delivering an offer letter. We'll probably have a little bit more negotiation. This is a person who's a retired executive from the Tualatin Valley Parks and Recreation District in the city of Hillsborough. Person with deep experience in operations and as a CPA, has done administrative management and financial management and operations management. And we're looking to engage this person for about 3 months or so to help us identify some priorities and get a work plan prepared so we can move forward on modernizing some of the digital assets around our financial and payroll systems, and really help us improve some of the systems and understanding of how we best do procurement here. We've got some opportunities to improve our procurement. So we're excited and hopeful we can land this person. And a couple of other happy notes. You all received a link and a PDF of a Portland Tribune story looking at the new agency and how we're hoping to make the whole system more resilient, more equitable. And while there are a few factual challenges in the article, I think the arc of the narrative is really strong and really powerful. And I want to thank Evan Mitchell and Astor Moulton for their work in making that article happen, and for Colin and others who spent time with the reporter and photographer. And then last, I want to let you know that in my effort to continue to breathe life into the equity strategy, we have mandatory training on Monday for all of our leadership team members to continue to build a foundational base of understanding and knowledge so that we can move forward in developing an equity action plan for our organization and help inform the new district as it implements its equity mandate. There's a lot more I can talk about. We've got a lot of things going on, but it's a lot of work and it's really important work, and we're making some good progress. And to those of you who live on Fairview Lake, we're going to do everything we can to keep those lake levels reduced going forward. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. And I want to thank you for your time today and all the days that you're helping these districts do their jobs.
Questions for Jim?
I was just going to mention that we do have a scheduled special meeting on Monday, this coming Monday, November 22nd at 10 a.m. To talk about the Fairview Lake pump station access issues and just get dive a little bit more detail of what happened and all that. But we also really appreciate the operations team and the MCDD as a whole for what's been a very difficult time and a very intense storm that came through. And but I just wanted to mention that the board wants to understand a little bit more in more detail about the operational aspects of what happened and learn from it.
I really appreciate the board scheduling that time. I think it'll be important just so you have the information to talk to the community. I would also share with you that every day I see one of these articles like what happened up in Canada and the northern side of Washington with these atmospheric rivers and 2 months of rain in 24 hours. Our system's not set up for that. And so I worry about it a lot, that these internal rain events are coming our way. And even with the core investments, we're not capable of moving that much water. So we're going to be trying to think through how do we really up our preparedness messaging and let people know that the climate is causing some very, very serious risks to our system. And I would appreciate your help in spreading that word and sending links around to your friends from that news coverage, because it's not a question of if it's going to happen, it's a question of when. So I'm worried about it. Okay, what a happy note to end on.
Thanks, Jim. And quite an opening year for yourself joining the team here. So birth by fire is what I kind of think of. So I think we're at the point the boards can adjourn. SDIC will stay in session, starting with Pen 1.
Thank you to all the board members. Thank you to the staff. Take care, everyone. Pen 1 board is adjourned.
Yeah, and then I would just add, as far as Pen 2 not being in session, I think we'll just go ahead and push that agenda item as far as appointment to the next meeting. But feel free to reach out to me if you have any thoughts on that in the meantime. Otherwise, we'll make sure Pen 2 has some dedicated time in December to discuss.
Kathy, Karen, good seeing you. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye, you guys.
Ken, you ready to adjourn MCDD?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for all the staff, for all the hard work that goes into these board meetings. We really appreciate it and appreciate the trying to make this efficient process, but still getting what you need out of it from the board members and input. So I wanted to say thank you to the entire team. And thanks to my board members too. And with that, MCD is adjourned.
And then there was SDIC.
Good to be with you all.
Yes.
Thanks for making an extra meeting happen.
This is very efficient. Thank you, Emily, for arranging this. So I have Bill Owen talking about a wet well improvement.
I had to look at my time. Good afternoon now. Thank you for staying on for a little bit longer. I have an opportunity to talk to you today about a budget request for your consideration that relates to the wet wells. Tom just mentioned, this is a project or a need that was identified in the SDIC Drainage Master Plan. Sorry, SDIC and City of Troutdale Drainage Master Plan. As you well know, that the Sandy Pump Station has some needs, has some deficiencies, but staff, while recognizing that, is spent a fair amount of time trying to decide what of those recommendations are appropriate to spend now and what should be deferred to be addressed by a replacement project that's part of the PMLS suite of work. This particular item we feel should not be deferred. And we made that pitch to you almost 2 years ago now as part of your approval of the 2020-2021 budgets. At that, and during that budget period, the fiscal year, we were able to start on it pretty late and only spent about $2,000 out of the $125,000 that was budgeted, that you budgeted back in that time. And honestly, it was an oversight on our half not to include that money moving forward into 2021-22. And so we're here to correct that mistake and ask that you consider increasing your pump station maintenance budget to include $122,000 to cover the remaining engineering and installation costs. Most of the other information is in that summary document. I know Ben had a chance to comment, and I included his responses with regards to any fiscal consequences by adding this, relatively substantial amount of money into your budget. So I'll stop there and hope to answer any questions you might have.
Annie, questions for Bill?
I don't have any questions.
No, it seems very straightforward. Thank you, Bill.
Okay. Thank you.
Nothing for me.
Okay. Emily, I believe we need an approval to change the budget, the annual budget, or I'm looking to Hong, one of the two.
I believe.
Yeah, so I would just be explicit about what we're changing and just make sure everyone agrees so we can have that recorded.
Yeah.
So Bill, if you have that handy to outline exactly what we're asking.
Yes, I do. So let me share this. Well, am I able to share?
And Bill, you're just asking for a budget adjustment.
Right.
That's correct.
Budget amendment.
So here it is under staff recommended board, and somebody can make the motion to approve the a change in the levee and drainage system maintenance budget for that purpose.
Annie?
Okay. I move that we would amend the fiscal year 21-22 budget and increase the maintenance budget by $122,000 to accommodate repair of the pump station wet well.
And I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll go to a roll call vote. Tanny?
Aye.
Ken?
Aye.
And Tom Hansel, aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Bill.
But thank you very much. Sorry we had to go through this extra step. I appreciate the support.
Yep. Keep those pumps safe. MCD staff, thank you for bringing this item from the October meeting to this next meeting for just kind of a work session to have a more discussion. So Hong, I guess you'll go ahead and open this?
Sure. To your, as you mentioned, Tom, this is a proposed resolution that has been adopted by all the other district boards. It is one that is being presented to this board for further discussion, and I will actually send it over to Jim Middow to provide any context background for the reason why we're doing this.
Yeah, just trying to make sure that all the boards are, consistent, and we're trying to build support in the community for the new mandate work for the new district. And in my interview process, equity was a really top priority for the boards. So I'm looking for every opportunity to try and elevate the conversation and keep the dialogue going, continue to get smarter on these issues, and ensure that MCDD is a safe and welcoming place for its employees, and that we're doing what we can to remove barriers to underserved communities out in the district. So that's the goal here. Really trying to set a tone and build a culture of inclusion and equity throughout the organization. And so I was looking for actions that really help communicate to the community and the staff that we're going to really try and prioritize making progress on these matters. I recognize they're complex, they're challenging, sometimes controversial, so I'm perfectly willing to entertain more conversation or take a different approach if the board prefers it.
Question from the SDIC board members?
Regarding the text? Or...
Well, it's just, this is a workshop. I mean, it's, so whatever questions on the resolution and the equity statement would be, this would be the time to ask staff.
I understand where we're going. I'm trying to get the connection with SDIC and MCDD, if that makes sense.
Let me try, and I'm open to others joining in. So MCDD has a policy, and a lot of it is aimed at sort of our employees. Now, because you guys have hired MCDD to run your business, we couldn't do the same resolution because you all don't have employees. So what we tried to do was come up with a similar language to reflect the MCDD position for all the other boards to adopt, even though you don't have employees. So that was our intention, again, to ensure there's a consistent policy footing moving forward. And also, again, trying to pull the existing districts in the direction of the new mandates for the urban district. And, there's demand on the staff, there's demand in the community for work on this space. So this is what we came up with. Again, I think there are many paths that we'll need to take to move through this and to make progress. So.
Okay. And so I guess I'll just start. I don't know how far this goes, but we're not involved in hiring or operations. And so I just don't want to see us get into a position where we're responsible for something to be executed on the ground level, and we really don't have any knowledge or control of what's going on. It could actually be a hostile work environment, and we wouldn't know that until like a claim came in. And I look in here and we're like, it talks about in the second whereas, it talks about discrimination policies and practices that resulted in social inequities. So I'm trying, who is this in SDIC? You know what I'm saying? Who are we looking at here to try to make right that's been wronged? And I'm just wondering, like, what is our equity lens? What does that look like? We're talking about budget funds. Is that more than the 3960 that we budgeted, or that amount? And then, is there a further financial impact? I don't know.
I don't expect a significant financial impact. I think these are excellent questions. I think the board retains all of its authorities. And I know that from the MCDD standpoint, in my role as executive director, I'm going to be looking to diversify our contracting. I'm going to be looking to diversify our team. I'm going to be looking to train folks. So, and I think, you know, from my perspective and the training and feedback I've received in past jobs and in the community, there's a wide range of things that have held people of color back and low-income people back. And while I don't have a specific prescription for the things we can and should do to help ameliorate those past wrongs, I do know that we should keep that in mind and do what we can within the resources we have and the mission that we have to try and remedy those things. And that's the intent of this resolution, is to send a clear message that our intentions are to do what we can within our mission and resources to try and make progress on these important issues.
Okay, and I'm just wondering, do we want to put in there that we're fixing something? Do we know who we are addressing it to? In the, you know, in the mission talks about inequities experienced by members of the SDIC community. So like, you know, I'm just wondering, who is that?
Well, I would venture that I don't have a specific individual in mind, but I'm guessing if you convened a group of lower income or people of color, that they could identify things that they felt like needed work. And so again, we're trying to do this in a more generalized sense. We're not admitting any specific liability, but we are trying to express our intentions to move forward in a way that helps remove any existing barriers or past challenges that have occurred. So I hear where you're coming from, Tanny, and that's what I'm trying to, you know, we're looking for every opportunity we have to elevate these issues and have this kind of a dialogue, because I think it's important. And I think that was consistent with the direction that the board provided to me when I was hired.
Okay.
So Tanny, I think under the second whereas, you're just seeing SDIC, what's our action? What do we do that we could do differently? And I think Jim's statement is, it's more of a, in the community at large, it may not be an action SDIC particularly initiated. I think we're just acknowledging people of color have inequities occurring. It's just an acknowledgement. Is there a potential rewrite or a changing of a state of some word, or can we look at a possible edit to make you more comfortable with it?
Well, yeah, I would think so. I guess what I'm looking at is, okay, if this is an urban flood safety as an example document, that's more holistic and it covers more area. And this is like Troutdale, Fairview specific. So I know that I'm going to get asked, okay, who are we talking about here? Are we talking about a particular, you know, business? Are we talking about a particular person? Who are we talking about? And
I think our intent is to really get at the systemic issues that underlie all the, you know, the air we breathe, the water we drink. Our whole culture is built up on a legacy of slavery and other things that we're trying to figure out what's the best way to move forward and address. And for me, it's an important conversation to have, but if this is entangling you in concerns, then I think we should continue to talk about a different approach.
I just want to add too that when we think about your community, Tanny, I know that our legislative, in what we do legislatively is serve the landowners. But when we think about community, and I hear you guys say this a lot, we think about not just the landowners, but the business owners, the people who lease the buildings, the people who work in those buildings, the people who take transportation in and out of the area. And so, you know, as we, at a minimum, as we move forward, you know, this sort of codifies that we are thinking about the community and not, you know, at a more holistic level. And I do think, yeah, it may not mean a specific action right now for SDIC, but perhaps we think about an approach when we are thinking about communications and engagement around certain decisions that you're making, so that we are thinking about that broader community, which I think you guys already do. I hear you doing it in a lot of the work I've seen you do over the last several years. I don't know if that helps or hurts, but
no, I think it helps. It's just, you know, I'm looking at it just from okay, the landowners that we represent, how does this impact them? And, you know, it's even kind of like we look at opportunities to prepare, respond, recover, and rebuild from flood emergencies. Do we help rebuild? And if we're saying that, and I don't know that we help people rebuild from a flood emergency, but are we saying that we're going to do that type of work?
Well, at a minimum, we rebuild your infrastructure, right? And so when we're rebuilding that infrastructure, do we think about the rest of the community and what they're planning in that rebuilding? And I think there are answers to some of these questions.
And I think what it might mean
And
is
maybe
focusing on the lowest income folks to make sure that they get both awareness and services. You know, those who can least afford might need more initial support. But again, it needs to be factored in. And I do think that SDIC will have a responsibility in directing your vendor, MCDD, to do that work. And what we're attempting to do is make sure that we have your permission to do that in a way that we think is consistent with best practice, which is to identify people most impacted or who have been less able to access some of these services in the past. So we're trying to overcome those things and change the way we think about this stuff. And it's a journey, and there's no one right way to do it.
Would it make sense, Tanny, to write our own equity policy in our own words that addresses?
I mean, we could do that, or even maybe, you know, we agree to accept MCDD's policy as a vendor. I don't know.
And Tanny, I want to acknowledge this is a hard conversation to have, and I appreciate you bringing it up because I think you probably speak for others. So again, I want to applaud you for engaging in this conversation. I really do. It's not simple.
There's also some legal ramifications that Brian has brought up as well, in terms of the wording and that I haven't fully digested because I just got it here at 9:01 a.m. this morning. So I think we have to look as well at what the wording is and what concerns Brian may have.
It sounds to me like this group is there's the values piece, and then there's sort of the legal passing a resolution piece. And I might suggest maybe if we can't resolve the resolution legal piece, maybe we think about just doing a value statement for this group to start, rather than making it quite so formal.
I think there's really value in having a values statement, but like Tanny, I think it has to apply to the district it serves right now, because it is just limited geographically, and so it's got to be tailored, I think, to what that district serves right now. So I like that idea, Evan, and I think maybe I don't know if we want to take a stab at modifying this, Tanny, and try to rewrite or pull together our values. To me, that makes sense. I think we're on board with what MCDD is trying to do holistically. I think it's just how it's being executed maybe we're concerned with.
Tanny, would it be helpful if you and I set up some time to chat about it and I could take the first crack at a draft for your review?
Yeah, that would work. That'd be okay with everybody?
Yeah, that'd be great.
That'd be great.
Okay. Would probably be after Thanksgiving, but we need to get together anyhow, and it'd be good to have a deeper conversation so we can produce something that works for y'all.
Sure. Okay. Great.
Tanny, thanks for sharing your thoughts.
You bet.
Let's see, financial forecast and cost obligations. That's an exciting topic to finish on.
I can try. We tried to reflect on the direction we think we received from you on cost allocation at your last meeting. We prepared for you a forecast that we have shared, And I'm prepared to be corrected, but we went away from your last meeting with what we thought was direction to prepare a potential resolution for your consideration that would identify the project costs as the basis for your contribution to the PED. So we have a resolution to that effect that has been shared with you. But we realized as we were pulling that together that perhaps you want to go in a different direction. So we are here to try and facilitate your direction and to support you in figuring out how you'd like to work with the rest of the districts on the PED.
Jim, I don't know if I got that resolution. Ken, did you receive something?
Yeah, it was sent out, I think, today by Kelly.
Yeah, and that's on me. I apologize. I thought that had been sent sooner. So again, something for you to consider. And if this isn't the day because of that, that's again my responsibility. I'm sorry you didn't get it sooner.
I think we should push that to the next agenda or next meeting so we have a chance to review it.
Yes, my bad. We were distracted by other events recently, so.
I just like to have a chance to review it thoroughly. I was paying attention to the meeting, so.
And I guess what I need you to be thinking about is we are going to need each of the districts to come to some conclusion about PED funding through the budget process, because our first payment will be due as early as October of next year. It could be that we'll be in budget reconciliation or the Corps will slow down. It's not a hard and fast deadline, but hopefully we'll have clarity from the Corps by then. We'll also know about the state grants and some other things, but we will need to build a budget that contemplates that first tranche. So that's the time frame.
I guess I just have a general question. Why a what's the purpose of the resolution when we've already had discussion, our CIP address is identified, we're paying project costs. So why a resolution? I mean, I'm not an attorney. We've already got it in our meeting minutes. We adopted a 20 or 10-year CIP with that condition. So go ahead.
Kelly,
I was going to say, I think Kelly can provide that response.
Yeah, I think where we were looking was in your statute. There's a specific provision for contracting with other municipal governments or with the federal government that requires a resolution that finds that your actions are in the best interests of the district. And so we were just trying to make sure that we kind of kept all those avenues open for you so that that would be, and it just kind of clarifies for everybody else what SDIC's position is so that, we're clear moving forward.
And Tom, it documents the fact that this is not precedent setting for future cost allocation consideration. So I think for records, a recordation of it for all parties, I think provides practical benefits as well.
Yeah, I'll take a look at it. I'm just sorry I didn't wasn't tracking my
it's
email.
on us. No need for you to apologize.
I was going to say, I think Jim is very brave to have taken the bullet for me. It had been sitting with me, so I apologize that it just got out today. And again, the intent was for you to have some significant time to consider the language and revise the language as you feel appropriate. But with respect to the whereases, they were taken from prior resolutions. So you can look at the history of that as well.
And while we have you convened, I don't know, Chair Hansel, if you would like Ben to go over that 5-year forecast with the full board, but he's prepared to do that if you'd like. And we could probably talk a little bit, if you want to, about our conversation around a longer forecast and some of the opportunities and challenges associated with doing that. That's up to you.
Well, looking at the time, I want to check with Tanny and Ken to see if they're, and the rest of the staff, could we run a little long and continue this discussion, or do we have commitments at the 1 o'clock commitments?
I think we're scheduled to 1:30, Tom. At least that's what my calendar says.
I added that buffer on there for this topic.
Oh, of course you did, Emily. Thank you.
But I want to make sure you don't feel forced into conversation you're not ready for. That's not our intent.
No, so I appreciate having this discussion. this was, all the boards were looking at this. I had actually wanted to note kind of our long-term prospects of what our financial capacities were. And Jim, you took this, and Ben got the assignment. And this is, I guess, a second draft. I saw a first draft. So Ben, Jim, if you want to present it, I know Tanny and Ken haven't had the opportunity to have a discussion like I did, but Ben, do you want to just take us through it?
I sure would. I'd be happy to. And can you folks see my screen? Okay. So with this financial forecast, I have 3 scenarios prepared for you to review. And I had a really good conversation with Tom over the phone a while back. And we talked about the capacity for SDIC to pay for the PMLS costs with the project cost allocation and what that would look like going forward in the future. And so I put these 3 scenarios together for you just to show you what that might look like. So when we look at SDIC in the past from 2017 to 2001, your assessment revenue on average over those 4 years has been right around $1 million. Your materials and services has been right around $650 million, and your capital program on average each year has been around $130,000.
I think you meant 650,000, not million, just checking.
Oh, did I say
Their system
million?
is really top notch, but
That's right. Thank you.
I thought maybe you got some infrastructure dollars that you tacked on there.
Yeah, 655,000. Thank you. And what you'll, and also I recognize that this board has increased their rates significantly over that time frame to accommodate your capital program and other needs. And so this this compound annual growth rate of your assessment revenue is a little bit out of whack, but I think all of you should understand that because you passed those resolutions to increase your assessment rates each year. Looking at your materials and services though, looking historically, those expenses have grown 6.5% each year compounded over those years from 2017 to 2021. And I just wanted to give you that perspective because I'm going to show you what that looks like going forward in the next 5 years. So what I've done is I put together these 3 scenarios. All of these scenarios are identical except for one thing, and that is your assessment rate increase each year. And so I've kept that static in each scenario. So what I mean by that is in scenario 1, looking forward 5 years, I have every single year a 6% assessment increase for the 5 years. Similarly, the same story for scenario 2, an 8% increase each year for the 5 years. And the same for scenario 3 at 9%. So that's a brief overview. Any questions or comments on that before I continue? With that, I also want to give you a look back over the last several years, starting in fiscal year 17-18. So I know I have just a single year on there. It says 2018, but that represents the fiscal year 17-18, so ending in 18. And I just wanted to show you what your revenues look like. These are actuals, and also these are not rounded. Looking back, we just talked about these things. So your capital program has varied over the years, but on average, it's been that $130,000. And your materials and services, same story. It has varied over the last 5 years, but on average, it averages at 655,000, not million. And then also your reserves. So this is what your reserves have looked like over the last 5 years. And again, you've really built up those reserves in preparation for the PMLS expenditures. I also wanted to give you a look at your capital program. Again, this is looking back. So I think all of you should feel really good about your capital program, investing in the infrastructure, investing with those contracts with local vendors, and spending this money on the system. So in total, from 2018 to 2022, and I know that you just passed a resolution to pay even more in 2022, but in total, it's right at $700,000 that you've invested in your infrastructure. Now we take that same look, and now we're looking at your capital program going forward in the future, and this is going to make more sense as we go on to the next slides. But you can see down here in this line item, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the PED costs, and again, these are using the allocation of the project cost allocation method, and this is only going out to 2026. There's also construction costs, and I recognize now that I misspelled construction, so please ignore that. There's construction costs that go beyond 2026, so there's more costs there, but this is what it would look like until June 30, 2026. And in total, that would be $3.7 million of capital portfolio that we're looking at for SDIC in the next 4 years or so.
And this is assuming that SDIC stays SDIC and not combined into the new district.
That's correct. This is all hypothetical. If the new district doesn't assume SDIC or it's not dissolved in any way, this is what it would look like. And Jim, you're on mute if you wanted to say something.
Doesn't incorporate any state grant funds or other cost offsets that we're working on, or potentially a general obligation bond that voters approved. So those are all off the table for now.
Exactly. And you'll probably be privy to a conversation. Mark Wilcox and I are ginning up a presentation that will kind of outline or frame some of those dynamics, like the levy grants that might happen, how those measures might impact this storyline as well. So with that, now I'm going to launch into the 3 scenarios. This is scenario number 1. Again, this represents a 6% annual assessment increase each year, and how that would impact your reserves, also taking into consideration your capital program. Again, the capital program that we just looked at that includes the PED and PMLS costs going forward the next 4 years or so. So this is scenario 1. With that capital program and a 6% annual increase, that would leave your reserves at the end of 2026 at around $80,000. And that's really, this is really the story. This is the therefore that we're really driving towards in this storyline. So what does your reserves look like at the end of 2026?
Hey, Ben?
Depending, yeah, go ahead.
I noticed the capital numbers changed on this slide, scenario 1 from the 23-24, from the adopted CIP.
Oh, this number right here?
Yeah.
Yep,
is Bill identifying some other work that we're not aware of, or?
You know what? You're absolutely right. That was me. I think I produced a scenario where you adopted that budget change that you've just adopted. So I may have already included that in the capital program here. I think that's what the change is. I may not have taken that out when I switched to this presentation. So I think that this number represents some of that.
So just to clarify, that was the increase in the budget for the wet well, is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
So I apologize for that difference. It looks like the 2024, 25, and 26 numbers do reconcile to that prior slide.
Nice catch.
Yep. Same story here. This assumes an 8% annual increase each year, and it would result in a remaining $300,000 approximately reserves at the end of 2026. And then a 9% increase. So this, you'll recognize this negative number here. What that represents is that this graphic only shows your current revenues, the revenues that you're bringing in for that year. This negative number just means that you are dipping into your reserves to pay for your capital program in that year. That's all that represents. So this would leave the district with $370,000 at the end of 2026. Those are the three scenarios that I have for you, and I'm happy to go back and review any slide that you'd like.
So Ken, you're accurate. This is I'm just wearing my SDIC hat, and until such time as we are dissolved, I'm just trying to be mindful of, we have to be planning. Go urban and dissolve us. But if the scenario is that gets delayed, we still have commitments. So I just wanted to be kind of aware of what our future looked like if this district was still operating. So that was the primary purpose of this. It's just we should always be thinking, what should our assessment be for next year? Ben's model provides some scenarios. His scenarios is we exhaust all of our reserves. Another scenario is we could issue financing, just to have some reserve. This is going out. We'd be talking to MCDD staff to say, what is the proper reserve for our environment in 2025, 2026? It may be different. Something could be happening. But this is positive that, we're actually in the black, right? So I think it derived that information.
And Tom, when we had our phone conversation, you brought up a really good point. I just wanted to reemphasize really quickly to the group that there are many millions of dollars of additional construction costs beyond 2026 for the PMLS that this does not account for. So there's through 2026 to 2031, there's a lot more construction costs that could potentially be allocated to SDIC if it was still in place.
Yeah, I think it's some to the tune of like $4.9 million or something if it was on the current numbers.
That sounds about right.
So let's hope our all the faith in our urban getting stood up and this liability gets shifted.
This is really good work, Ben. This is really helpful. Thanks, Tom, also for having this done. It's actually good to see that our budgeting has really worked to put us in a good position as just a district, as a standalone district. So, and then it shows how the broader, if you can get a broader tax base, how it could be really helpful, to spread those costs and benefits out.
I think it really opens some policy discussion, as far as, do we start building our assessments to address the construction PMLS work and, eventual FEMA or the cross levy gate tower, those are all liabilities that are on our horizon, on SDIC's horizon until such time, of course. So as we develop our, as Ben takes us through the budget process this next spring, he's going to say, which model do we want to exercise? What reserve balance do we want to have in play? Are we operating with SDIC as long as we're SDIC, or are we on board that the urban is going to get stood up in 2023, 2024, 2025? Those are the considerations we're going to have to weigh. Because there's obligations in those out years.
Definitely. Do you know, Ben, you probably haven't had a chance to dig into who's actually paying within the district. Is Bonneville Power, have they ever paid us? Because they hold a significant land mass.
Yeah, that's a good question. I couldn't say definitively for sure, but I do think, this would be hearsay, I do think that we did get payment from Bonneville.
If you want, I can wander down the hall and see if Janet can answer that question.
Yeah, Janet's in the app. She could answer that question. Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be answered today. I'm just curious because they're going to now turn one of the larger lots into private ownership here shortly, which lot 12 trip will go to a private entity. They're in the middle of transacting on it.
That's good news.
Ken?
Yeah.
I'm here. This is Janet.
Oh, hi, Janet.
Hi. Yes, Bonneville has been paying us, so we're current on all that. I haven't billed them for this year's direct bill, but we've collected on the others.
Okay, good. I knew you were having a hard time collecting it first, so I didn't know.
Well, the only reason I have a hard time collecting is that there's been a lot of people that have retired and the names have changed, and so it's just hard to find the right person, and people are working remote.
Right.
So, but otherwise, yeah, everything's current with that.
Good.
We knew Janet could answer that question.
Sorry, Janet, I didn't realize you were still with us. Thank you for paying attention to multiple things at once.
So Ben, one thing I think would help me as we go through our budget process is tie in the why for the increases. I know the capital's clear. We have a CIP adopted. The M&S, what's that? What are those investments? Often Bill and staff come with a series of projects that we're going to accomplish. I really want to make sure they're going to get accomplished, right? Because I know all of us are facing resource issues. So as long as like in 2025 on scenario 3, we are going to spend 734,000, right? It's just, your model is just an escalator. The other piece is, can we execute that budget? And that's a capacity thing. So I just want that I don't know if that's been validated, because I know SDIC is not the only district staff are working on. So it's just, and that's another piece is, at the county, we don't have these sort of escalators. We're typically cutting our budget with just COLA inflations, 1.6% last year. So these are very aggressive, and I think that will also reciprocate into our state, into our landowners. So we need to have good rationale why our assessment escalations are being performed. I mean, the PMLS, it's very clear, but the materials and supplies, we just need to be spot on that there is a work plan. It's just not a number, and then we build a work plan to spend it. We still need to be conservative in our spend, knowing we have this astronomical capital demand. Sometimes you can't do it all. So.
Well said. Ben and I have talked a little bit about these sort of A-B budgets too. So you could adopt a couple of them, and then depending on outside revenues, the other one would take effect. So again, more conversations to be had, not just with SDIC, but with all the boards who are contemplating similar scenarios. So the thing I like to remind everybody is if we get beyond 2025 without a GO bond, we're in real trouble across the board. So.
Danny, you serving as treasurer, you got any thoughts on this? I know this is the first time you had a chance to look at it.
Yeah, it's kind of a tough decision. And, a few years ago, we took a pretty good public whooping from the landowners, because if you look at it, 5.5 years ago, we adopted a budget that was $228,000. And I know we had to make a lot of increases to survive and get where we're at. But it's not even so much the fact that, it's an 8 or 9% increase, and that's better than what you've seen, Mr. Landowner. It's the fact of we've extracted another, 4.5, 5 times the amount of revenue from these people than what they were paying in a pretty short amount of time. And
we also had some new properties come online too.
Right, but I mean, sometimes it's a tough lift, especially with what some of these people are seeing economically. And so, Tom's right. We've got to look at this and make sure that, we're coming at them with some good numbers and some good justification for those things. And, I know that urban's going to get stood up, and I think, frankly, Penn 1 or Penn 2 are going to be out there standing it up themselves. Because I don't think they have any way to fund a lot of their projects, at least at this point, without that happening. So I have faith there. But yeah, it's something we've got to look at a little bit closer, I think.
Well, I hope these materials help you do that. And I'm really grateful to Ben for spending time with Tom, and Tom for your willingness
this is awesome.
Put the time in to help make sure we're transparent about all this for you and the landowners you serve.
I think we might be ready to adjourn. Is that correct? Ken, you good? Danny?
I'm good.
Is there any additional direction you have for us in terms of how we can support your decision-making around the PED cost allocation through the budget process? If not, we can continue to work with you each month to figure that out. If there's any today or anything you want at your next meeting, do let us know.
Definitely do that.
So the PED cost, I guess maybe at another meeting, we just get a briefing on, I know. So when we do work with ODOT, we often have to move money into the state treasury, but it's still on our account. How does ODOT, or does the Corps have something similar that we give them money and then it's drawn as it's used, or do we write a check and we're out cash? Or is it still our cash, but they have access to it?
Mark, do you want to talk about
like an escrow account?
Do you want to talk about the different options the Corps will work with us on? That would be great.
My understanding is the cash flow works as such. They send us a letter prior to the beginning of each annual cycle beginning with the full amount for that year, and we provide it to them. So they'll hold that in an account. If you're alluding to any potential for interest earned or anything like that, that we haven't discussed anything of that nature. The other detail with respect to cash flow is that if we need to, the Corps can accept payments. We can work out sort of a payment plan, recognizing, for instance, that assessments for all the districts come in after October 1st, which is when we expect to have a due date for those funds from the Corps. They've talked about options to bill us monthly or quarterly, particularly in the front end of the year, so that we can use assessments versus other means should that be necessary. Does that help?
Yeah, Mark. Yeah, thanks, Mark. I know SDIC, we're flush with our reserves. We won't have to do that package, but I was just trying to understand. We transfer funds, and at some point we must get statements of work completed, I assume.
Yeah, I can find out more about that, Tom, with respect to that detail. We have been asking the Corps to provide a lot more granularity on how the PED process works. We have a new project manager, and they're stepping in and are going to provide some of the details as they find those out for us. But yeah, if you keep in mind that on the Corps' end, they'll probably be issuing a contract and having to encumber those funds into a separate account for that year's activity, because they'll be issuing, it's a possibility they could be doing work in-house. It's a possibility they could be issuing contracts to a design contractor to assist them. They've told us that it depends on their capacity. And so if they have to issue contracts versus just coding that and using that money for their staff time, then they'll have to be sending out payments. But otherwise, they'll be metering out the payments as the invoices come in from their contractors. So if that gives you a little bit more light as to how that cash is distributed, but so that
it's just the accounting nerd in me, I'm sorry. You know, especially from Janet's side, she's going to have to be booking this as, you know, a capital improvement. So on the expense, so basically we're going to expense the payment at the start per year. So it would be just a betterment to SDIC. So we accurately report that on our annual report.
This is why it's good to have board members. Thank you, Tom.
Ben, thank you again for your work.
Yes.
Tanny, Stephens, Tanny and Ken, thumbs up, we're good?
Yes.
Good. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for
Let's
the
go ahead
ongoing
and adjourn.
conversation about all this, you guys. We really want to help you get it right. So thanks for your patience as we develop the information and for the ongoing feedback and dialogue. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Have a good one.
Thank you all.
Care.